My name is Alicia, and at 32 years old, I never imagined walking away from my family's craftsman-style home in Beaverton, a Portland suburb, feeling like a stranger after one explosive backyard BBQ. When my parents yelled at me to get out and never come back, I finally did it, no turning around this time. What they didn't realize was that I'd been quietly covering their $2,200 mortgage for 3 years, keeping the roof over their heads while they dismissed my every success. The stunned silence on my dad's end of the line weeks later, when he called about the bank notice demanding why the payments had stopped, hit harder than any argument we'd ever had. It was the moment everything I'd buried came crashing out, forcing me to draw a line I'd avoided my whole life. If you've ever navigated those suffocating family tensions that drain you dry, hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories like this. Drop a comment on where you're tuning in from, and stay with me to uncover how one bold stand flipped my world, and maybe yours too. Growing up in our Beaverton home felt like navigating a minefield, the kind where one wrong step triggered an explosion of criticism that echoed through the quiet Portland suburb. The house sat nestled near forests and trails that promised escape, but inside those walls the air grew thick with tension, especially whenever my father, Clifford, fixed his gaze on me. From my earliest memories, he set impossibly high standards, ones that shifted like shadows in the Oregon mist. Designed, it seemed to highlight every shortfall. A report card with mostly A's would draw his scrutiny to the single B, his voice calm yet cutting as he questioned my effort or preparation, leaving me to wonder if perfection was the only path to his approval. My mother, Megan, played the role of peacemaker in those moments, slipping into my room after his lectures with a soft word or a hug, assuring me things would smooth over soon. Yet she never confronted him directly. Her interventions temporary bandages over wounds that reopened with the next disappointment. Her presence a quiet enabler of the dynamic that kept me on edge. As the youngest and now the focus of our small family of 3 after the others had drifted into their own lives, I absorbed the full weight of his expectations. The comparisons weren't to siblings but to some invisible ideal he held, one drawn from his own unfulfilled ambitions perhaps, making every achievement feel diminished. When I brought home awards from school activities, he would nod briefly before pointing out areas for improvement, his comments weaving doubt into what should have been pride. Friends became another arena for his judgment. He dismissed them as distractions or poor influences after brief meetings, questioning their backgrounds or ambitions in ways that made me second-guess my choices. Starting around age 12, the critiques extended to my appearance. Subtle at first but persistent remarks on my clothes making me look unkempt or my posture lacking confidence, each one chipping away at the self-assurance I tried to build in secret. Those memories make me wonder if you have family stories like this. Share them in the comments. The house itself amplified the strain, its craftsman details like the built-in bookshelves and wide windows offering glimpses of the outside world where families seemed harmonious in my imagination. Yet within those rooms the atmosphere charged with unspoken rules, where expressing interest in creative pursuits drew his scoffing dismissal as impractical. He worked long hours as an engineer back then, providing comfortably enough for my mother to handle part-time teaching while managing the home, her domain filled with polished surfaces and organized routines that masked the underlying fractures. She took pride in the manicured yard visible from the trails nearby, but her efforts to maintain peace often meant redirecting his frustrations elsewhere, usually toward me as the easiest target. I learned early to anticipate his moods, reading the furrow in his brow or the clipped tone in his questions, adjusting my behavior to avoid the storms that followed. High school intensified the battles, particularly over my future, expressing fascination with marketing, how brands told stories through visuals and strategies met his resistance, as he insisted on more stable fields like engineering or accounting where women, in his view, faced fewer barriers. But the creativity of campaigns captivated me, the way data and design intertwined to influence outcomes, a world far from his rigid blueprints. Against his advice, I applied to programs in secret, drawing quiet encouragement from my mother who would glance away during his tirades, her silence a form of complicity that left me isolated. The constant measuring against his standards crushed my confidence at times, yet it fueled a quiet determination to prove myself beyond his narrow lens. Family gatherings, rare as they were in our subdued household, turned into tense rituals around the dining table, where conversation circled back to my perceived flaws, his voice dominating while she smoothed edges without altering the core. Looking back, the patterns emerged clearly. his criticism sharpening as I grew, perhaps mirroring his own regrets from a career that demanded precision but offered little fulfillment. By senior year, the house felt smaller, the trails outside a temporary refuge where I walked to clear my head, plotting my escape to college. My mother's attempts to mediate grew wearier, her assurances hollow as the explosions recurred, leaving me to navigate the emotional debris alone. Those years shaped my resilience, pushing me toward independence even as they planted seeds of doubt that lingered into adulthood. The suburb's serene facade homes lined with evergreens and paths winding through woods contrasted sharply with our internal chaos, a reminder that appearances often hid deeper rifts. Graduating with honors in marketing from a state university felt like a quiet victory, though his response focused on the schools I hadn't reached, like the Ivy Leagues he dreamed of. Securing my first job at a mid-sized agency right after came with praise from colleagues. But at home, it registered as a hobby unworthy of detail. He introduced me vaguely as working in ads, diminishing the promotions and client wins that built my career. Meanwhile, my mother maintained the household rhythm, her part-time role at a local school providing structure, but no challenge to his authority. The financial stability I achieved allowed modest living, savings tucked away, unaware then how it would intersect with their later struggles. The suburb evolved around us, new developments encroaching on the trails, mirroring how his expectations encroached on my autonomy. Visits home in my 20s revealed the same dynamics, his barbs about my single status or career choices laced with bitterness, her interventions fading into background noise. I poured energy into work, rising to senior manager by 28, trusted for strategies that drove results. Yet family interactions drained that confidence anew. The forest nearby offered solace on those drives back, paths where I reflected on the invisible standards that still haunted me, forging a resolve to break free one day. Pursuing my career in marketing opened doors I had only dreamed of during those tense high school years. Yet it came laced with the same undercurrent of disapproval that had shadowed my choices. The field drew me in with its blend of creativity and strategy, the way campaigns could shape perceptions and drive real change, far removed from the rigid paths my father had envisioned for me. Against his wishes, I applied to programs that emphasized digital trends and consumer insights. Drawn to the stories numbers and visuals could tell, predicting behaviors in ways that felt dynamic and alive. Graduating with honors from a respected university program marked a turning point. Though his reaction lingered in the background, a brief acknowledgement overshadowed by questions about more practical alternatives. Securing my first role at a boutique agency straight out of college felt like validation from the world outside our Beaverton home, where clients valued my ideas and bosses encouraged innovation, propelling me toward senior manager by age 28. My clients trusted my instincts on branding projects, often commending the fresh approaches I brought to their challenges, but family visits diluted that sense of accomplishment. My father would introduce me casually as someone who worked in ads, reducing years of effort to a vague hobby not worth elaborating, his tone implying it fell short of true substance. Meanwhile, my mother continued her part-time teaching routine, maintaining the household with a quiet efficiency that avoided rocking the boat, her subtle nods during his comments reinforcing the familiar dynamic without words. The craftsman-style home remained a constant backdrop, its wide windows framing views of the nearby trails where I sometimes escaped after tense dinners, reflecting on how my success seemed to widen the gap rather than bridge it. 3 years ago, everything shifted when my father faced a company restructure that ended his 28-year tenure as an engineer, a role that had provided stability but demanded relentless precision. At 59, he struggled to land comparable positions in the competitive Portland market, where tech shifts favored younger talent, leaving him to navigate interviews that yielded few callbacks. The severance helped initially, but as months passed, the strain showed in subtle ways: the delayed repairs around the house, the evasive answers about bills. My mother refused to alter their lifestyle significantly, dismissing ideas of downsizing or her taking on more hours, insisting at her age, opportunities were scarce and the home represented their hard-earned status. The suburb's upscale vibe, with its well-kept paths and community events, amplified her reluctance, as if moving would signal failure to neighbors. I discovered their troubles by chance during a routine visit, spotting my father late at night in the kitchen surrounded by stacks of envelopes. His shoulders slumped in a way that betrayed deeper worry. When I pressed gently, he admitted they were months behind on the mortgage, risking foreclosure on the place that held so many layered memories. The thought of them losing it stirred something protective in me. despite the history of critiques that still echoed. Without consulting them, I contacted the lender the next day, arranging automatic transfers from my account to cover the $2,200 monthly payments, a stretch on my salary but manageable with my modest habits and savings from promotions. I chose to keep it secret on my own, knowing his pride would twist any open help into an insult, viewing it as judgment on his capabilities rather than support from a daughter who cared. He eventually secured part-time work at a local hardware store, claiming it bridged the gaps, and I went along with the pretense to preserve his dignity. Looking back, that decision prolonged the illusion, allowing them to sidestep reality while I shouldered the burden quietly, my marketing role providing the financial buffer that masked their growing dependencies. The house's features, the sturdy built-ins and sunlit rooms, stood as symbols of what I aimed to protect. Yet the secret weighed heavier over time. My father's evasive responses to questions about money hinted at deeper issues, like the new credit lines my mother opened without discussion. Tension simmered beneath the surface during my bi-monthly visits, his confidence eroded by the demotion from engineer to stocking shelves, a role he downplayed but that chipped at his self-image. I noticed the liquor cabinet depleting faster between trips, a quiet sign of his retreat, while my mother busied herself with minor home updates to maintain appearances. My career flourished in contrast, with bosses assigning high-profile accounts that honed my skills in digital strategies, earning commendations that boosted my position, yet returning home diluted that momentum. His subtle digs about the industry's superficiality reminding me of unresolved patterns. The trails near the suburb offered brief respite on those drives, where I pondered the irony of my success enabling their denial, a cycle I hadn't yet broken. Gradually, the financial strain became impossible to ignore, their conversations laced with worry when they thought I wasn't listening. My mother's refusal to seek full-time work stemmed from a belief in traditional roles, her identity tied to the home she curated meticulously. I lived frugally in a compact apartment downtown Portland, channeling extra income into the payments, prioritizing their stability over my own potential investments like a condo or enhanced retirement fund. The secret sustained a fragile peace, but cracks emerged in their interactions, the side responses, the avoided eye contact during money talks. My father's part-time claims grew thinner, his stories of covering expenses ringing hollow as bills piled subtly. I pretended belief to avoid confrontation, buying time that ultimately delayed the inevitable reckoning. Over the years, the signs of strain multiplied in subtle shifts that I initially brushed aside, weaving through our interactions like unseen roots beneath the suburb's trails. New credit cards appeared in the mail during my visits, their statements tucked away hastily, signaling a reliance on borrowing that contradicted my father's claims of stability. Tension rose palpably in the air of the home, conversations turning clipped or evasive when topics veered toward finances, his once steady demeanor fraying at the edges with unspoken worries. The craftsman-style house, with its characteristic low-pitched roof and exposed beams, held onto old memories of simpler times, marks on the doorframe tracking my growth. A scuff on the floor from childhood games but now carried an undercurrent of discomfort, rooms feeling smaller under the weight of accumulating silences. My bi-monthly drives to Beaverton were mainly for my father, whose confidence had dimmed since the layoff, prompting me to check on his well-being amid the quiet suburb's facade. I noticed the liquor bottles in the cabinet emptying faster between trips, a quiet indicator of his retreat into solitude, perhaps to numb the frustrations of his diminished role. Those observations stirred concern within me, a knot forming as I witnessed the man who once commanded technical projects now flinching at minor setbacks, his pride a fragile barrier against reality. My mother moved through the space with her usual efficiency, rearranging decor or tending the small garden visible from the windows, her actions a distraction from the growing discord. In an effort to bridge the widening gap, I brought thoughtful gifts on those visits, hoping to spark moments of connection amid the strain. A soft wool scarf in her favorite earth tones, selected during a work break for its warmth against Oregon's chill, met her brief thanks before she critiqued the material as too scratchy, setting it aside without trial. Another time I arranged a spa day for her birthday, spending several $100s on treatments meant to offer relaxation, yet on the drive home she complained about the therapist's pressure being too firm, her skin reacting poorly to the products, leaving me to absorb the rejection silently. When I offered homemade meals like her preferred casserole, she tasted it once before questioning the ingredients, suggesting shortcuts I must have taken, her words eroding the gesture's intent. Those failed attempts accumulated like unspoken debts, each one highlighting the barriers that my efforts couldn't penetrate, deepening the sense of isolation despite my proximity. When looking back at those signs, I wonder if you spotted them sooner in your own experiences. Share your thoughts. The house amplified the unease, its cozy nooks now shadowed by the tension. Memories of laughter from earlier years contrasting sharply with the current heaviness. I tried varying approaches, like inviting her to lunch at upscale spots near the trails, where conversations might flow freer, but she turned the outings into critiques of the menu or service, steering away from any vulnerability. The warning signs intensified over the past year, his criticism growing more pointed, less veiled as helpful advice. During shared meals, his comments on my work veered into dismissal, labeling marketing as fleeting trends rather than a viable path. His tone laced with a bitterness that hinted at his own regrets. My mother followed his lead in those moments, her peacemaking reduced to changing subjects awkwardly, avoiding the core issues that simmered beneath. I pushed through with persistence, booking experiences like a local wine tasting to foster lightness. Yet she found faults in the selections or atmosphere, her dissatisfaction a barrier I couldn't dismantle. 2 weeks before the breaking point, I stopped by unannounced with takeout from their favorite spot, letting myself in with the spare key to surprise them. Voices drifted from the living room, his tone sharp as he vented about my supposed arrogance, calling my career a show of superiority that belittled their life. Assuming I looked down on them, frozen in the hallway with the bags growing heavy, I absorbed the words like a blow, her murmurs of agreement amplifying the sting before I backed out silently, retreating to my car where tremors took hold for minutes before driving away. That incident lingered in my thoughts during the following days, a catalyst that sharpened my awareness of the patterns I had long normalized. The suburb's trails offered no solace on subsequent walks, my mind replaying the overheard dismissal, questioning how much longer I could sustain the facade. My father's resentment seemed rooted in my independence, each promotion or client success deepening his unease, as if my path contradicted the sacrifices he highlighted from his engineering days. My mother's role in enabling allowed the dynamic to persist, her avoidance preserving a fragile equilibrium at my expense. The home's details, the warm wood accents and inviting porch now evoked a sense of entrapment rather than comfort, symbols of a stability I maintained invisibly. Visits grew heavier with anticipation, my chest tightening the night before, yet guilt propelled me forward, the cultural pull of family duty outweighing the toll. Therapy sessions I began considering flickered in my mind as a potential outlet, though the step felt daunting amid the ongoing strain. Gradually, the emotional gymnastics wore thinner, panic creeping in before each trip, my well-being secondary to their needs. The signs pointed to a tipping point, yet I clung to hope for change, unaware how close the fracture loomed. It all exploded at my dad's birthday BBQ in the backyard, where the scent of grilled meat mingled with the suburb's pine-laced breeze, masking the undercurrents that had built to a breaking point. The gathering fell on a mild April Saturday, prompting me to pack an overnight bag and head to Beaverton despite the lingering unease from recent signs. Determined to celebrate his 60th with a gesture that might pierce the tension, the gift, a carefully sourced vintage car part for the model he had admired in magazines years ago, saved for over months, represented a dream deferred by his job loss, something to reignite his spark amid the dimming confidence I had observed. Tension gripped the air from the moment I arrived, his greeting curt and her hug stiff, as if the home's welcoming porch hid the brewing storm within. I had suggested reservations at a nearby steakhouse he favored, but my mother vetoed the idea swiftly, insisting on her homemade pot roast to avoid unnecessary expense. Her decision steering us toward the familiar dining setup under the backyard awning. The table bore the good china reserved for occasions, yet the conversation stuttered through superficial topics, neighbors' updates, garden plans, each one circling back to veiled complaints that heightened the unease. The meal dragged on despite the flavorful roast, his wine glasses emptying quicker than usual, withdrawing him further into silence with each sip. When the time came for presents, I handed over the wrapped box nervously, watching his expression shift from surprise to flicker of delight as he uncovered the part, turning it over in his hands with a rare softness. Yet my mother's face tightened immediately, her question about the cost slicing through the moment like a chill wind, ignoring his attempt to deflect. The evening unraveled from there, her words escalating into accusations of extravagance while we scraped by, his enabling nod fueling the fire without intervention. As cleanup loomed, I wandered to the kitchen for coffee, The house quiet with them presumably resting, but voices carried from the adjacent study with the door ajar. Their tones, low but audible, revealed the depths of their plight, maxed credit lines, looming property taxes, his admission of being underwater financially, stirring a resolve in me to offer guidance. Drawing from my professional expertise in strategic planning, I saw an opportunity to craft a sustainable budget, perhaps explore refinancing, tools I wielded daily for clients facing similar binds. Seated with steaming mugs moments later, I broached the subject carefully, acknowledging the overheard fragments without accusation, expressing concern over their situation since the layoff. My mother's color drained, then flushed, her voice accusing me of eavesdropping, though the words had drifted clearly. I steadied my tone, explaining my intent to help with budgeting as part of my daily work, resources that could ease their load without judgment. My father's sarcasm cut in sharply, mocking my so-called expertise as condescension, implying I viewed them as incapable, his words twisting my offer into an attack on their independence. The unfairness stunned me. Years of self-reliance through college loans and promotions dismissed as handed privileges, igniting a spark I had long suppressed. I countered firmly, asserting my hard work and genuine concern, but the exchange spiraled, her interjections enabling his bobs without resolution. The argument escalated in waves, his voice rising to lisp perceived flaws my career as superficial, my life choices selfish, while she amplified the grievances, their combined front eroding my composure. Something snapped within, decades of walking on eggshells culminating in a quiet stand, declaring the pattern's toxicity where attacks went unchallenged. Their rage peaked in unison, chairs scraping as they rose, the yell to get out and never return echoing through the backyard like a final decree, freeing me from the burdens they deemed unworthy of gratitude. I moved upstairs mechanically to gather my bag, the house's familiar creaks now foreign, descending to find her turned away at the window and him standing helplessly in the hall, closing the door softly behind me. I drove the 40 minutes back to my apartment in a numb haze, knuckles white on the wheel, the suburb's trails fading in the rear view as the weight lifted in unexpected relief. The journey passed in blurred miles, my mind replaying the eruption without tears or screams, just a hollow acceptance that propelled me forward. Arriving home, I sat in the parked car for an hour, the silence amplifying the shift, until a text from Cassandra broke the trance, her concern pulling me inside to recount the unraveling in steady tones that cracked only at the final dismissal. Weeks later, my father called about the bank notice that shattered the pretense, his voice carrying a mix of confusion and urgency that pulled me from a midday meeting. The interruption came exactly 3 weeks and 2 days after I had driven away from Beaverton, the screen lighting up with his number while I sat in my office, the rush of emotions catching me off guard despite the anticipation. Alone between client sessions, I took a deep breath and answered, his relief evident as he greeted me casually, as if the expulsion had been a minor hiccup in our routine. The conversation meandered through superficial check-ins before veering to the purpose, a late payment alert escalating to foreclosure threats, his bewilderment clear as he insisted the automatic transfers had always cleared without issue. That call prompted my decision to stop the support entirely, a step I mulled over in the days following the BBQ, consulting my best friend, Cassandra, who stepped in with the practical advice I needed on the financial implications. Over coffee in my apartment, she outlined the lack of legal obligation, the mortgage solely in their names without my signature, framing my contributions as voluntary gifts that could cease any time. Her perspective emphasized how continuing enabled their denial while straining my own future, her words resonating as I calculated the nearly $80,000 diverted over 3 years, funds that could have secured my retirement or a down payment on stability. Therapy sessions with Dr. Carver began shortly after, a specialist in family trauma whose insights peeled back layers of the patterns I had internalized. In our initial meeting, she described the narcissistic tendencies in his behavior, the enabling role my mother played, cycles of criticism interspersed with lulls that kept hope alive without true change. Her explanations framed my experiences as emotional wear rather than personal failings, helping me recognize how the dynamic perpetuated dependence, my secret payments a crutch that prevented them from confronting reality. Through guided reflections, I unpacked the guilt that surfaced with each missed payment notice they would soon receive, her techniques building tools to sit with discomfort without acting on conditioned impulses. Cassandra's support extended beyond finances, her presence a lifeline in the unraveling weeks as I navigated the emotional fallout. Over wine in my living room one evening, she listened as I vented the accumulated hurt, refilling glasses while countering my doubts with reminders of my worth. Her encouragement a counterbalance to the family void. She pointed out the unhealthy boundaries, how my sacrifices went unacknowledged, urging a reality check that mirrored Dr. Carver's advice. Her friendship a steady anchor amid the panic attacks that crept in before sleep. On the call with my father, the truth emerged gradually, his probing about the halted payments drawing me to reveal the 3-year arrangement, the $2,200 monthly from my account that had sustained their home. The silence that followed stretched long, his faint denial giving way to realization as I detailed the bank transfers he had overlooked, assuming they stemmed from his efforts. Pain threaded his voice as the enormity sank in, questions about affordability and secrecy tumbling out, but I held firm, explaining how pride would have rebuffed open help. After that call, I realized so much. If this story stirs something familiar, leave your mark. The exchange shut them down as I declared no resumption, the house no longer my responsibility, urging hard choices like selling or adjusting lifestyles they had resisted. His pleas for reconsideration met my resolve, the conversation ending with my boundary set no further contact to preserve the toxic cycle's end. Shaking afterward, I sat at my desk, the world intact despite the truce release, breathing freer for the first time in years, the weeks blurred in processing. Therapy with Dr. Carver delving deeper into enabling's harm, how my secrecy prolonged their avoidance while costing my peace. Cassandra's check-ins via text and calls provided grounding, her humor lightening heavy reflections, reinforcing that self-preservation wasn't selfishness. Panic subsided gradually, sleep returning as I embraced life without the anchor, investing the freed funds into personal goals like a revised savings plan. Dr. Carver's sessions highlighted the conditioned responses, guilt as a tool that kept me tethered, her exercises reframing obligations as choices rather than duties. Cassandra's wine nights evolved into strategy talks, her insights on independence echoing the professional growth I channeled at work. Promotions hinting at untapped potential now unleashed. The bank's notices would force their reckoning. Foreclosure a real threat in Oregon's market without intervention, but I released the urge to rescue, focusing inward on healing. Dr. Carver praised the progress, noting how breaking free accelerated in months what others took years, her validation bolstering my steps. Cassandra's encouragement reminded me of strengths overlooked, her presence a reminder that chosen bonds could replace blood ties without loss. The apartment felt more like home, small adjustments like fresh plants symbolizing growth, the suburb's pull fading with each passing day. Therapy uncovered how the dynamic pitted success against resentment, my achievements a mirror to their stagnation, Dr. Carver's frameworks dismantling the internalized blame. Cassandra's support wove through daily routines, her messages a buoy in quieter moments, affirming the path forward. The call's aftermath brought clarity, no apologies sought or given, the shutdown a final act of reclaiming agency. Dr. Carver's guidance solidified boundaries, her sessions a space to grieve without regression, building resilience against future echoes. Cassandra's companionship highlighted contrasts, her balanced life a model for my own, wine evenings turning reflective on freedoms gained. The financial release opened possibilities, investments now directed towards security, the weight lifted revealing untapped energy. After that call, I went no contact completely, blocking their numbers and stepping into a silence that felt both terrifying and liberating, the final thread severing ties that had bound me for too long. The decision solidified in the quiet hours following, a boundary drawn not in anger but necessity, allowing space for healing without the pull of guilt or obligation. My parents faced the fallout swiftly in the ensuing months, the bank's relentless notices escalating to foreclosure proceedings in Oregon's unforgiving system, where missed payments triggered auctions after just a few delinquencies. They scrambled to sell the craftsman-style home cheaply through a hurried listing, accepting an offer far below market value to avoid total loss. The suburb's competitive real estate leaving little room for negotiation amid their mounting debts. The move to a cheap apartment on the outskirts of Portland marked their downgrade, a cramped unit in a complex lacking the trails and views they once took for granted. Utilities strained by basic needs. Dad lost his part-time position at the hardware store soon after, the stress exacerbating his retreat and leading to absences that prompted his dismissal, leaving him to navigate unemployment offices in a market unkind to those in their 60s. Mom shifted to low-pay work as a retail clerk, hours on her feet in a chain store far from her teaching background, the role demanding physical endurance she hadn't anticipated. her identity reshaped by necessity without the buffer of denial. Meanwhile, I embraced the freedom in tangible ways, purchasing a sunlit condo in downtown Portland with bay windows and hardwood floors. A space entirely mine where no one could dictate terms or evoke unease. The extra funds from halted payments accelerated my promotion to director at the agency, overseeing larger teams on innovative campaigns that demanded creativity unhindered by emotional drain. Adopting a rescue cat named Leo brought unexpected joy, his orange fur curling beside me at night, a companion whose simple presence filled the apartment with warmth without demands. Reflecting on those changes over 6 months revealed a transformation I hadn't foreseen. The suburb's hold dissolving as I painted walls in vibrant hues my mother would have criticized. Choosing teal accents that suited my taste alone, career momentum surged with the mental clarity. Ideas flowing freer in strategy meetings, clients responding to the energy I brought unchained from family shadows. Dr. Carver's sessions tapered to bi-weekly, her affirmations noting the rapid shift from entanglement to autonomy, panic attacks vanishing entirely as boundaries held firm. Cassandra's friendship deepened in the process, our wine nights evolving into celebrations of milestones like my new home, her support a reminder that connections could thrive on mutual respect. The condo's balcony overlooked city lights, herbs planted in pots thriving under my care, symbols of self-sufficiency that contrasted the dependency I had enabled. Leo's playful antics grounded daily routines, his purring a soundtrack to evenings spent reading or planning trips, freedoms once sidelined by obligations. The hardest adjustment came in sitting with the sadness, loving them from afar without self-sacrifice, acknowledging the loss while valuing the gain. News of their struggles filtered through distant channels, foreclosure public records confirming the home's sale. Whispers of their apartment life highlighting the real consequences in America's unforgiving economy. Dad's job loss led to reliance on limited savings. Applications yielding rejections that compounded isolation, while Mom's retail shifts brought physical aches and meager wages. A stark shift from her previous comfort, yet those outcomes stemmed from choices unaddressed. Their refusal to adapt now forcing the reality I had delayed. My reflections turned to broader lessons, cutting ties sometimes essential for mental health when patterns prove unchanging. Valuing self over toxic bonds, a path to true independence. The condo became a sanctuary of peace, promotions affirming my capabilities. Leo's companionship a gentle anchor in the newfound rhythm. Therapy reinforced that forgiveness didn't require reconciliation, Dr. Carver's insights framing the no contact as protection rather than abandonment. Progress measured in serene nights and focused days. Cassandra's visits highlighted growth, our conversations shifting from crisis to aspirations. Her presence underscoring chosen family's strength. The apartment's details, sunny kitchen for cooking experiments, office nook for late ideas nurtured creativity. The financial release allowing investments that built long-term security. In quieter moments I pondered the irony, my withdrawal prompting their confrontation with consequences. Though without my involvement, the cycle broke for me alone. The suburb faded in memory, trails now symbols of paths diverged. My life unfolding in directions unburdened by past weights. Leo's affectionate headbutts reminded me of simple joys. Promotions opening doors to leadership roles that demanded presence I could now fully give. The lessons crystallized over time, emphasizing that authentic relationships uplift rather than diminish, honoring oneself a foundation for any bond. Cutting toxic ties, though painful, fosters growth, a value I embraced in every step forward.